Jim Beckman, Paul Laverty, Harbans Kohli, and Peter Lange.
I have a comment. Back in the 80s, Envirogenics started to make thin film composite membrane too. And the first batch of membrane they produced could not tolerate chlorine. And they said, well, this is not going to get anywhere. Everybody was so much against it sitting in a meeting. They said, this is a waste of money and this and that. And let's drop the project altogether. Now look at what happened. It has changed the whole RO industry.
That's right.
They could make 8-inch, so they put 5 4-inch elements into one vessel.
Oh, yes.
That was.
I was going to ask you about that.
That's one of the, because if you switch 30 years later, something similar in 8-inch exists.
Yes.
That's right.
So,
Somebody tried.
Okay. It was a very large diameter steel tube with an arrangement of 7 4-inch elements. Okay, 1 center, 6 around. It was introduced at a facility in Ras Al Khaimah about 1979. The project, it was the first one where we had 6 elements in a row and this nice arrangement for a 4.5 MGD system. That was a pretty darn large system. Complete.
At that time,
For that time, it was one of the largest RO systems. Why? Because at that time, there was no equipment available and no full knowledge available to make consistently good CA membranes in 8-inch.
You can't believe what it was like when Nito Danko first saw the spiral membrane element production facility for hydronautics. They were just, they couldn't believe that this could be commercially viable. They just couldn't believe it. And then when I visited their facility, I saw why they were so shocked.
The same trip, and Mike Humphreys was with me. The same trip, we visited Hydronautics, and they had constructed their casting machine out of plywood. And the applicator was a series of sponges they'd bought from the Five and Dime, I think. I said, you've got to be kidding me.
The 2 best tools that we had available was a turkey baster for sucking the bubbles off the edge of the trough so that they wouldn't wind up making pinholes on the final membrane. And then we would get fold-overs as we were pulling it through on the rollers. The membrane would fold over because it was being heated as it was moving along on all the rollers to dry it out. And the fix there was to tongue depressor, which you laid on the fabric and stapled it on, so that when it came over the roller, it would stay flat. It wouldn't fold over. So that was that was a couple of tricks of the trade that we used down at Fluid Systems in those days.
Why did Envirogenics go out of the membrane manufacturing business?
Well, I think they could not compete. They were not able to produce the quality of product which was available at that time. And the market got very competitive. It was cheaper to buy from Fluid Systems than to manufacture on their own. And then also I think a lot of money was invested in gas separation. And it didn't go anywhere, although it could have. And then money was pulled out, no more funding available, so they thought it's cheaper to buy from Hydronautics and Fluid System than to manufacture their own. One of the main reasons was that they couldn't make much progress. R&D was not properly funded. And I said, well, we may not be able to meet the quality we have promised. He took it and he says, yeah, it makes sense. So what do we decide? Now we call it snake oil. We said we'll take the CA membrane, treat it with the colloid, raise the rejection, and that will do the trick. So, okay, I was given the responsibility to do that. So we started to do element by element. We were injecting colloid, and when 95% reaches 97.5, we cut the colloid out, flush it out,
Yeah.
and we did all that, and everybody was so happy that, we'll be okay. We sent all those elements there. Now, we can't meet the capacity.
Little trade-off.
No, we knew it will drop the flux, but it dropped so much, the quality was almost twice as good as they wanted, and the flux was lower.
I can relate a little bit of that technology about, in those days it was called sizing. And what happened was we bought at Fluids at ROGA in those days, we were buying the membrane fabric from Texlon, and they were sending us this style called 715, which was their standard fabric that we liked. We tested a whole bunch of them, and we liked that one. It had the right permeability, and the membrane seemed to stick to it pretty well, and we were very happy with it. Every once in a while we got these membranes and we couldn't figure out why they were such higher rejection than our standard membrane. Lower flow but higher rejection. And we did a little investigation, and it turned out that they occasionally would send us this style 716 instead of 715. And we said, well, what's that? And he said, oh, well, that's some of our customers that were selling this fabric. They're not in the water business, but we're making all this fabric, this
identical.
wool. And it has this sizing material on it. And that was what started this whole thing about that kind of a membrane. And we, Jerry Foreman and Seymour right away filed a patent and got a patent on that membrane. Yeah. So anyway, it turns out that we, through working with Texlon people, found out what the chemical was. What is it? How are you making this 716 with the so-called sizing material on it? And they said, well, that's a product that we buy from colloids, and it's called Colloids 189.
Yeah.
And so we figured out, well, why don't we just get the standard membrane without the material already attached, already sizing, and do our own. And that's sort of how we learned how to actually make membranes and then treat it with the colloid. I have friends at pretty much all the companies, that are either they're still there or they recently retired or something. So
right.
It was, and you're right, it was extremely competitive. I can remember Cadot and the work we were doing on thin film, and Riley, and they were they get it again. They jumped ahead a little further, or it was back and forth.
Right.
We all had in those days. We all had these OSW or EPA contracts, and so information was shared, but it was friendly. It was not a real ruthless. It was like, congratulations, we'll get you next time, that kind of attitude. And I think that's for me, it's been a fantastic career.